Welcome back to another exciting episode of 60 Plus Uncensored. I'm your host, Seb Fry, and today I'm joined by Karen Green, who is one of the UK's leading sales experts with a background as a buyer for both Tesco and Boots before beginning a decade of service selling into the UK grocery market. Today, she's an award-winning consultant, speaker, and coach who has helped transform sales for clients from Virgin Startup to the UN International Trade Center. She's the author of two best-selling books, Recipe for Success and Buyerology. And when she's not writing or advising, she's judging on the Great Taste Awards, mentoring startups, and contributing to outlets like The Sun and The Telegraph. Karen, thanks so much for being here. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate it. I will be 60 in 3 weeks' time. I've been living in the south of France, just north of Nice, for the last 10 years. And when I decided to move over here, I needed a new way of making money. And so I took all of my experience from working as a retail buyer for two retailers in the UK, Tesco's and Boots. And then after that, as a sales director, and kind of packaged all that up, wrote my first book, which was called Recipe for Success: How to Help Food Businesses to Grow, and moved over here and set up a consultancy business and kind of gone from there.
All right, so you're from the UK and you live in Nice, France. And so what part of the UK are you from?
I'm from a small town called Newbury, which is about 60 miles west of London.
Right, everything is 60 miles west of London, more or less.
No, not really. When I went to work for Boots, then I moved to Nottingham. So then I was quite a long way north of London.
Right, Nottingham. I actually have a friend who is from Nottingham, lives in Nottingham still.
Yeah,
So,
my
all right,
son's
well, there you
still
go.
there, so it's a good city. It's a good city to be young in, but um, it doesn't have the sea and it doesn't have the mountains, and
It has
yeah,
a forest, though, with bandits in it.
it does have a forest. It's quite far north, but yeah, no, it does have a forest.
All right. But you have left the glory of the United Kingdom to move to France, of all places. So, what brought that on? Why did you decide to move to France?
I a long time ago, actually, I had a redundancy from Boots, and I had a small amount of money, and I thought, well, what shall I do with it? So, I decided to buy a small apartment in Antibes, which is just down on the coast here, and rented that out. And you know those days where you go, right, that's it, I've had enough. Maybe you don't have that, but I'm leaving. And all the time I'd be like, well, I can't leave my children, who would have been a bit younger then. So I always kind of promised myself when my daughter, who's the younger, went to university, then I would go and move into my flat and see what this life in France would be like. So yeah, I did it, and for the first year it was pretty good because I had a couple of contracts that kind of kept me going financially, and then they finished, and then I went, oh, now what? So I had to kind of learn how to market, write my book, get a secondary income going, renting out my apartment in the summer, and yeah, and it's kind of grown from there. It's been an interesting 10-year journey for sure.
Yeah, well, I think that is kind of the dream that a lot of people have is to retire in France, right? Or any sort of sunny Mediterranean climate in Europe. I mean, there's a lot of popular places, Italy and Slovenia, Greece, right? Southern Spain, right? But you chose France. Why did you choose France when you could have gone to any of these lovely places?
Well, it's near. I spoke then some French. My French is better now, but I'm still not fluent. Um, and I guess probably because it was easy, and I'd been to this part of the world. I had friends already who lived down here. And where we live is we're right on the border with Italy, so you have the advantage you can drive across the border within an hour. But you have the sea, you have the mountains. You're just over an hour's drive to ski if that's your thing. Um, it's a really, really beautiful part of the world and very versatile. So I haven't. been to well, I've been to most of the countries that you mentioned, but I haven't been to anywhere. We all travel and we go, I don't know whether you do, but you look in the windows and you go, would I live here? Would live there? And no, originally actually I was gonna buy in Italy, and then I got kind of scared off by the bureaucracy and the complications. It's not much better in France. And then Spain, they eat really late, and I'm afraid I'm quite an early bird. I'm really into my food, and the thought of having to wait till 10 o'clock every night to eat, it's just no.
Got it. Well, so you said a couple of other interesting things there. Because I think that like a lot of people, like in the United States, particularly, they, would like to live abroad, but they worry that they might not have enough money because they think, oh, it must be very expensive in Europe. Like we have the idea that it's expensive. Maybe that's true, maybe it's not, but they're wondering how to like, pay the bills while they're in another country where they may not have a work permit. Now you, because at the time you moved, there was the EU, and I guess you no longer. I mean, I don't know how that works anymore. But so can you address that topic? I mean, like what? Because you did it, right? You did it. You already had a contract going, but that only lasted for a year or two. So then, what did you do after that? How do you keep the money rolling in, living as a retiree or expat, or do you consider yourself a retiree or expat? I'm not sure what you consider
I
yourself as. How do you make it work financially?
I would say I'm an expat. So how did I make it work? I think obviously minimizing outgoing. So I sold my house in the UK, and was going to pay off my mortgage here. Now, as it happens, and that's another strand of story, I didn't pay it off. I actually went and bought another house because I thought that was quite a nice idea, also in France. But some things are cheaper here. So healthcare is a lot cheaper, which I know is really significant to people in the US. Obviously, I work as a self-employed. I work for myself. I run my own business. So um, we pay in France. I think I'm paying about 70 euros a month for my medical care. So I don't know what you would pay in the US if you weren't employed, but I suspect it's a lot more. And that gives you everything pretty much. So medical care is not as expensive. Energy is cheaper than the UK. Food is more expensive generally, although the UK is having a bit of an inflationary push. Um, so it's about budgeting and thinking about, well, if you're retiring, have you got the pension pot? And then obviously there are all the complications of bringing the money into France. So there are some challenges there, which I'm not really qualified certainly to talk about coming from the US. Coming from the UK, yeah, I do kind of understand that side of it. But we do have, I have a friend who's from Austin, Texas, and he's retired here, and he makes it work. The big thing that's probably significant is the cost of property. Property's a lot cheaper here. Not where I live, actually, but
Not
um,
in Nice, huh?
no, no, no. So Paris is the most expensive area, I think, we do it per square meter. But yeah, around here is the next more most
Next most
expensive.
expensive.
But
I went to Nice one time, long time ago. My first trip to Europe, I popped through Nice, but it was in like December, and so it wasn't very nice.
it's okay in December, but now is but I think now is the best time. September is the best time to visit. It's a beautiful time of year, and the weather's nice, and it's not too hot, and there's not too many tourists. Um, but if you go into maybe the wine regions, which is always a very romantic area that people are interested in, you can buy. A friend of mine, I've just been to visit her. She's just bought a house just north of Limoges, and she paid 79,000 euros for it, and it's huge, big gardens, big. Oh gosh, I don't know how many bedrooms she's got. Three, four bedrooms, and a decent size. Because I know you Americans like bigger property than certainly the average French person does, actually. You can get studios here. I have a friend who owns a studio in Nice, and it's 11 square meters. I don't know what that in feet is, but it's not many
Like
feet.
100 square feet. That's small.
It's
Yeah.
tiny. It's really tiny. Um, so yeah, and what else? Fridges. kitchens are tiny here. It's a real paradox to me that the French are the queens and kings of cuisine, but actually their kitchens are usually really tiny. They don't have ovens, and their fridges, yeah, you you just look at it as like a little ice box as part of your overall fridge. But
Right.
um, yeah, the French fridges are really tiny. So
Yeah, so little known fact is that Paris has 4 times the density of San Francisco. And so people think of San Francisco as like, this is like you live in a small place, right? You don't live anything like a small place like you do if you're in Paris. And it's actually, unfortunately, watching Love Island, not Love Island, what is it called? Love at First Sight. What's that blind dating? What's it called? Love is
right,
Blind. Love is Blind. My
yeah,
wife watches that. I was watching it last night, the Love is Blind France, and they went back to live in their little apartments. I'm going like, Jesus, man, that's a efficient living right there, right? What those guys are doing, and they were stylish apartments, right? But they were squeezed in there pretty tight for two people who barely knew each other, right? I mean, because you're on
yeah.
top of each other all the time. Um, but yeah, so I think the Americans do like larger living spaces. I mean, like the U.S. ethos is one of abundance, not of scarcity, right? It is one of like living a big life rather than living a small life. So I think we're just sort of acculturated to larger spaces. But it's interesting about the property prices in France is that my understanding is like the economy of the French countryside is not doing very well, right? And that a lot of people are moving to like Paris and like the larger cities because there's more opportunities there. But like in Nice, though, Nice is like a very famously nice place. What does like like a 100 square meter flat cost like in Nice, like 2 bedroom,
100
100?
square meters. That's a big apartment for Nice.
Is it? Okay, 75 square meters.
75 square meters, so 60, 75 square meters, depending what it is, where it is, could be anything. A friend of mine actually has just bought one for 100, which was 100 square meters, and I think she probably paid about 300,000 for it, but she's got to do it up. Whereas, yeah, you're looking at probably 500,000 if you want a sea view. It depends what you want. If you want a sea view, then it really ramps it up. Um, so it's a chunk of cash. But again, it depends. If I'm comparing it to New York or San Francisco, that's probably nothing. If you compare it to the mid states, then it's a chunk of cash. I mean, my American friend lives in a little village called Griolière, and I don't know what he paid for his, but it won't be more than 100,000 max. So it's
Very affordable, very affordable. And France is very lovely. I've been there many times, but it's been some years since I've been there, many years actually now. But I had a trip planned for my 50th birthday to France. We had it booked, all the hotels, everything. And then COVID happened, and we were like watching like the airlines like shutting down the flights and all that. And we're like, we're still going to go anyway. And then they canceled our flight, and that was that. And that was in 2000. That was in the yeah. We were supposed to go in April of 2000. So. Sorry, 2020. So missed that, unfortunately. But getting back to the like occupation, so you mentioned that you wrote a book while you were living in France, and so tell us about your book that you wrote.
so I've written two actually. So the first one was my oh my gosh, I really need to do something to market myself. So the first one was called Recipe for Success, which was about all of my experiences working for different food companies, selling into grocery retail, what can go wrong, what to do right. Um, and that one, gosh, when did I write that? 2018. And then I wrote a second book 3 years ago called Biology. So that was trying to move away a little bit from the broader food business and to talk more specifically about sales and thinking about how if you study your buyer and look at the person as a person rather than as a corporation, how it can transform the way you sell. So the whole basis of the book is going in and profiling somebody that you're selling to before you actually do the selling, and then adapting your methodology to that. So I've created a little biology matrix to think about the three pillars of whereas normally when people sell, they think about the company they're selling to and they don't think about the person or even how the person interacts with that company. So,
Right. Well, I'm in sales. I sell real estate. And when I got into real estate, I didn't think it was sales, but actually, it really is a sales job in the end. So you have quite a lot of experience with sales.
I do,
But
yeah. Probably very
your
different to yours.
your sales was B2B, not B2, like business to business. Do they say that in Europe? B2B,
Yeah, B2B, we
B2C,
say
right?
B2B. We picked it up from you.
Okay, so your experience that is mostly B2B versus B2C. Is that fair statement?
Yeah, no, that is fair. And I think certainly in real, I've never worked in real estate, but I guess you meet the people and you probably are very good at assessing those people in terms of the types of lifestyle, the types of personality, the things that they're looking for, um, and the types of property. And for me, what people tend not to do when they're doing B2B is to actually do all of that. What they do is they say, right, I'm going to sell to Tesco's and they've got, I don't know, 3,000 stores and I'm going to sell a bar of chocolate and they're going to buy this bar of chocolate and this is why they're going to want it. But they don't actually think, well, who is the buyer? What did she do last Tuesday? What kind of personality has she got, etc., etc. And that bit that you're probably really good at, the average B2B doesn't do. So
Right.
it's so that's the premise of the book, actually getting under the skin of um, selling to the complete, having a more holistic approach than just going, right, I'm going to sell to a corporation and I know what their business is and I know how my business fits with their business. But you forget that I think in Harvard Business Review did a survey and they found that 95% of corporate decisions are based on emotion, not fact, which I find quite staggering, but I've seen it happen time and time again. And we do our own, don't we? We think, oh, I really want that. And then you build a logic around that.
Right. Well, that's what we say in real estate. Like people choose the house based on emotional reasons, and they try to justify it with money, right? And but they always end up overpaying. Not always, but quite often. That's okay. But people do business with people, right? And so we say B2B, but really, like you're not talking to an AI who's making the decision to purchase, right? Or maybe you are these days. I don't know. But ultimately, you sign a contract with a human being, right? So like how important is it in the corporate space when you're like negotiating huge, I imagine hundreds of millions of pounds, euro, whatever, sales of, product to different corporations? How important is it that you have those relationships inside the companies that you're dealing with, or does it not really matter in that space?
I think it is mattering less because the big corporations like Walmart are using AI to do a lot of their buying now. Um, but the I've seen it recently actually, which in a company that I've been working with, where their relationship at the top of one of the biggest retailers meant they've just got a listing, and I'm kind of sitting there going, how have they got this listing? Because there's a lot of things that don't stack up financially, etc. But they've got the listing and they've got the support and it's actually snowballing and now there's some more products being launched, and that's all to do with the relationships that they've got at the most senior levels, and that's not to say the products aren't great, because they are, and the proposition is great, but there's 100 different products out there with great propositions, but this one's got pushed over the edge, I think, because of that personal relationship and that and the connections. It's not necessarily the personal relationship, the connections with the different people. So I think it is important, but 99 times out of 100 it needs to be backed up with the facts, with the numbers, with the propositions, with all the things that maybe, I don't know, maybe people who buy real estate. I bought quite a bit of real estate since I've been here, so I have some views on the subject, but the French are very different. Um, and I think that's the other interesting thing that I've struggled with actually here is negotiation. So I'm trained in negotiation. When I was at Tesco's and Boots, I went on training courses. I've negotiated with buyers on the other side of the table. I've taught negotiation. And when I got here and tried to negotiate, it's just impossible.
They don't negotiate in France.
You don't
Take
negotiate.
it, take it or leave it.
Take it or leave it. I mean, the house that I'm living in now, which I bought a year ago, um, it took us 5 months to agree a price because she wouldn't negotiate. And I go, well, I've offered her this. She wants this. There's somewhere in the middle. Apparently not.
Apparently not.
Apparently.
Well, yeah, I mean, like here in the United States, like people don't negotiate. Although we're seeing that more now because, like in the Bay Area, like we're having a lot of influx from cultures that they do negotiate the hell out of everything, right? People from Asia, the Middle
Yeah.
East, right? I mean, like these people negotiate a lot, right? And so like they're maybe more comfortable with it. Although as they become Americanized, I think they tend to like negotiate less or differently maybe than they would have back home. But let's talk about negotiation. That's a very interesting topic to me. So you've done a lot of negotiating in your life. So what is it like negotiating at that level? I mean, these are high stakes negotiations that you're a part of, right? So what kind of like because I imagine not every single time that you had the numbers, like a lot of times you were maybe competing against other products and their numbers were better somehow, like the margins were better, maybe I guess volume, I don't know, but um, how are you able to negotiate from a weaker hand to like get deals done sometimes when you're working at Tesco and Boots?
I think I mean, from Tesco and Boots, I was on the other side of the table. So I was a buyer in those companies. So the power that we had, I was the buyer for vitamins and supplements, which is the second biggest area that Boots buy. So negotiation there is easy because I don't like you're using, I was going to say you're abusing, but you're using the power. So negotiation becomes easier. But even then, when you're dealing with the bigger corporates, which we were doing to some extent, what you've got to do is do some selling. So what you're trying to do is to say, well, actually, putting your money into Boots is a much better idea than putting it into a competitor. And I think the art of negotiating, whether you're a buyer or a seller, is still selling. And what you're doing is you are building that desire. So whether it's the fear of missing out or the need to have that product, the the emotion takes over. So if you can build that emotional relationship, then the logical rational decision making disappears. So the margin will not, it's still got to be within the ballpark, but the margin will disappear. The pricing isn't so significant. The investment that's going to go into marketing might not be quite so mind-blowingly hard targets, but you've just got to get that. It's that getting that engagement, and once you've got the engagement, negotiation does become a lot easier, unless it's French.
Unless it's the French, right? Yeah. Okay. So getting that engagement, yeah, that is a great tip there. Is that because if people aren't engaging with you, obviously it's going to be hard to get them to do anything. So now here you are, you're living in France, and you had this big high flying career, and now you're kind of like reinventing yourself. So like, what does your day look like in France? Like you wake up, it's a beautiful day, the weather is lovely, right? You have a croissant and some, whatever else you guys have over there in France. And what do you do all day long? You wake up. What gets you going?
So first thing is I usually do a bit of work actually. So I'll get up. I'm still English, so I have a cup of tea. Um, and we'll probably do half an hour's work, usually a bit of marketing, might do some LinkedIn, what have you. And then I walk my dog. So we'll go out for an hour around where I live, or we might drive a little way up the road and go up into the hills, and we'll do a good hour's walk, and then I'll come back, have usually some one-to-one coaching calls. Again, might do some marketing calls like this, do the odd podcast. Um, don't eat that many. I'm not overly fond of croissants. I do like almond croissants, but we have to limit them because the other thing the French are really hot on is testing, and my cholesterol's too high, so I'm not allowed to eat all the good things that they have. I do take an hour for lunch though, which is a French thing that's been kind of drilled into me. I don't go to restaurants, but I do take an hour off for lunch. And then, yeah, in the evening, go out. There's some lovely places to go. And I'm quite near Grasse, the home of perfumery, or down on the coast. And yeah, and we travel as well. We go to different places at the weekends and round to friends. There's a lot of friends. I've got a lot of friends that cook, so we go to different people's houses as well. So there's a lot of food.
A lot of food, right? I remember what was it, the second time I went to France, third, fourth, I don't know, but I'd met a woman in Thailand just randomly and not like romantically or anything, but I said I'm going to France next, right? Like later this summer. She said, "Oh, you must come visit." And so I did, and she had us over to her grandma's house, and we had a French lunch. And it was 2 hours. It was like 11 courses, right? I was like, "Wow, that's a pretty impressive lunch you have there." But tell me about your work that you do. So, okay, you get up, you do marketing for half an hour in the morning. What does that mean, doing marketing for half an hour in the morning? What does that look like?
So I'm a big LinkedIn fan, so I will go on to LinkedIn, see who's posted. Um, I post most days unless I've been super busy recently with a client which was not full time but it was sort of 70% full time, so I didn't get as much done. Whereas now, I go through the trade press, see what's interesting to me, will write a post about it, post, comment on other things, um, cover off any emails, any inquiries that come in. So that's my kind of quiet admin. I see it as like a warm up. So it's my brain warm up before I do some deep work later on in the day. Unless I'm giving a workshop tomorrow about selling to a different company who manage NED roles and chairperson roles, and I'm going to teach them how to sell themselves better when they're doing interviews. So I was writing that yesterday morning. So sometimes I do some deep work, and then break it up during the day because I don't know. I guess you're out a lot, but for me, I work from home a lot, and even though it's beautiful and I'm looking down the mountain, yeah, it can get a little bit claustrophobic in some ways. So, but yeah, most of my marketing is either LinkedIn or going and talking to different people, organizations. I don't know if you've heard of Fortnum and Mason in London, which is just a lovely retail store. It's about like Harrods, but maybe maybe a bit
Better.
better. Anyway, they do the most amazing afternoon tea if you're ever in London. And I was there talking to all the embassies in London about how to market themselves in the UK. So that was really interesting. And then from that, I've got a talk to some Belgian postgrads. So yeah, it's an interesting. I don't know if you ever feel you should be more strategic. I feel I should be more strategic because the things that come in are quite random, but I find it really interesting because I'm always got something quite different. And occasionally I go, oh my gosh, what am I actually going to do with this one? But it all kind of comes together in the end.
So you said you go and give a talk. Does that mean you physically travel to these places, or is it all virtual these days?
Sometimes. So the talk tomorrow is virtual, although I will be in London because I'm actually taking another client on a what we call a retail safari around London. Um,
Oh.
but I think now there's more in real life again, and I quite like that. It's good to get back out there and connect with people physically rather than doing it online. So I would say it's probably about 50-50. And this month or in the next 4 weeks, I'm going to London to speak. Then I'm going to Czech to be part of a workshop, and then back to London to do this other workshop for the Belgians. So I travel. I'm trying to travel less, but I would say I probably travel about once a fortnight. And then I'm going to Stockholm for another gig at the end of November, where I'm hosting a workshop for a coaching client. So yeah,
So a fortnight is 2 weeks. Is that correct? Is
yeah.
that what a fortnight is?
Can't have a fortnight. You don't have one of
Okay.
those.
All right. And you're gonna go meet with the Belgians. I lived in Belgium for 4 months, and
Wow.
it was dreadful, to be honest. Yeah, it was. I mean, the weather was just like so bad, and the Belgians were not the most effervescent, bubbly group of people that I've come across, and I think it has to do with the
They're not.
weather. Was that?
No, I don't. I'm half Belgian actually. My father was
You
Belgian.
half Belgian. Oh, really? Interesting. Well, they have great chocolate and beer, and I gained like 40 pounds when I lived there because you just stay inside because it's raining all the time outside and gray and gloomy, right? Because I was there from January to like April, and so like just as I left, it started getting better, but it
It's
was grim.
bad. No,
Uh,
it's a bad time. Going to Stockholm in November is not going to be a very fun operation.
right,
It's much better in
right,
the summer. But yeah, no, I do. There always seems to be something coming up to go to.
Well, it's wonderful to get out, right? I mean, like, because like, the first few months of COVID were great because the weather was like really lovely here in March 2020, and like, I live like really close to like a lot of parks, like big, huge, massive parks, and the ocean, and like, so we would just spend hours just like walking around, right? Like there's nobody, there's no traffic, and we just like walked around paradise basically for, months and months and months, and it was great. But really, it had like a really corrosive effect on my life, my lifestyle, my
Mhm.
relationships, and everything. Basically, it really ground them down, and it's really like I'm now trying to like actively be more out in public in person and not be in the house because it is so easy to stay in the house these days. I'm in my house right now. It's
Mhm.
easy to stay at home and like do a lot of stuff, and I think it kind of paints you into a corner because life happens outside of your house, right? And so it really is important to go and meet people in person. So it's great that you are still doing that. That you're traveling quite a bit. I guess it's easy to travel inside Europe because the flights are short and cheap, right? So it does make it easy to get about.
It,
Um,
it is now. The summer's hard. July and August is really expensive and difficult, and there's lots of delays, etc. So yeah, now it gets better from now until well next year. And yes, some of the flights are very reasonable. Um,
right.
but we've had, I don't know if you saw, we had a cyber hacking, was it yesterday or the day before? So Heathrow, two other airports were affected. So they were literally checking people in manually. So you can imagine how that
Oh, that must have
speeded
been
up
fun.
things in one of the biggest airports in the world. And we're just going to do the manual check-in for you. You're like, "Oh my God."
Sure. Wow. Well, I mean, like it just goes to show how like how fragile everything is that we've built here. That's for sure. But you said something else that really caught my ear, and that was you do coaching. Tell me about coaching. I love coaching. I don't really do coaching, but I've been a coachee, I guess you would say, for many times. I just got back from a week of coaching
Okay.
out in Colorado. So tell me about the coaching that you do.
So I suppose it splits into two really. One is I would say more traditional coaching, and the other one is more mentoring. So the coaching I work with a variety of different people actually to help them understand maybe what's holding them back, or they tend to always be in the sales space because I feel that that's where I've got my area of expertise. But I'm working with an intralogistics company at the moment who do all the what I call the insides for Amazon and the big warehouses. And I've worked with their sales team now for about 4 or 5 years, and we kind of get into where the challenges are, how we can overcome challenges in the workplace, how in terms of management, in terms of what people want to do. Um, I'm quite interested in digging into purpose, and I always I'm quite within this particular organization quite well known for a lot of the people that I coach to leave, because I am very challenging in terms of what do you really want to do? Do you really want to be doing this, or would you rather be doing something else? So I think that's quite interesting. But I've also got a number of people who've stayed and they've really grown within the business. So that's been quite interesting. And then on the mentoring side, which is quite different, and I do distinguish between the two, because for me coaching is more leading and asking, and how, what do you want to do, and more open questions, whereas with the mentoring, it's much more around the consultancy, helping people. I tend to work a lot with women of colour who want to, or have started their own food businesses and want to grow them. Um, and we've had some really good successes in that space as well, getting the businesses to the next level, getting them into major retailers. I did 3 years working for United Nations International Trade Centre, doing the same sort of thing. So working with mostly chocolate companies actually in Ghana, Caribbean, a spice company in Eswatini, and then a cashew nut juice in Senegal. Again, same principle, bringing them into the UK, trying to find ways for them to grow their businesses. So again, quite a broad brush, quite random. The themes underneath it are all around food and retail, I suppose, are the underpins.
Right, that's the glue that holds it all together.
Glue that holds it all
Um,
together, as to me just randomly wandering around.
well, you mentioned something that said you dig into what holds people back in your coaching. So, what does hold people back? I mean, are there typical things that hold people back, or is it different for everybody?
I think in a lot of cases, what holds people back is not actually understanding other people. So the whole principles, going back to my biology theories around, if you profile buyers, you can sell better. The principle is the same when it comes to working in a corporation, where you're selling ideas more than things, but you're, within one of the corporations, they're quite strong project management needed, so that you're having to motivate quite different types of people. And we've done quite a lot of work on how to understand other people, how to profile them, how to adapt behavior without losing your self identity. Because I think the other problem, and I've seen it a lot, especially with women, is they feel they should be in a certain way. And I don't like the word should at all. And so we think through, well, why do you feel you need to be that way? Well, because I want to get this done, or I've got this, and I don't feel I'm achieving it, or I think I should look this way. So we work on that in terms of how do you represent somebody, or represent yourself in a way that's congruent with your own purpose, but also with other people. So then, of course, you've got to dig into, well, actually, first of all, what's that person really want? What's their values? What's their purpose? Does the organization fulfill that? And how do they get on and succeed? And we've seen people go on and be promoted 2 or 3 levels up, but more importantly, be happy. And that's why I see people also leave the organization, because they kind of go, actually, this isn't really what I want to do. And I find that really interesting as well. And I think certainly with a couple of the organisations I work for, because people have worked for them for a long time, there's that reticence to leave, and they're like, well, do I really want to leave, and will it be beneficial? And it's just helping people go through that process. And some people don't want. Some people are very happy, and they go on and do amazing things within the organisations they're in. But it's really great to see people progress. And like you, I've had a lot of coaching. I've when I mentioned that, when I first moved here and my contracts came to an end, I went to a business event and I met a coach, and she helped me put together a package of mentoring and consultancy that I could sell, because I didn't actually have anything to sell. I was just like, oh, I can help with this and that. So she helped me devise a program. And then when I wrote the first book, I got a coach. Second book, I got a coach. Um, yeah, I launched courses. I had a coach. So I'm quite a believer that you need somebody. It's good to have somebody to help, with expertise, relevant expertise. But I would say mine have been more skill based coaching than Although I did talk to a retirement coach not so long ago, which was really interesting because I was getting a bit overwhelmed. And then she
Right.
sent me a list of all, because we were talking about, I said, well, what, if I did retire early, what would it look like? And she sent me a couple of profiles of people that she'd worked with and all the things they did. And I went, oh my gosh, they're even more busy than I am. I want to wind down if I'm going to retire. I don't want to, he was volunteering and he was doing this and he was doing that. And I was like, wow, that's not helpful. I do take on too much. That's it's one of my flaws.
Well, I mean, I have no plans on retiring ever, really. I mean, maybe at some point, but it'll be like a long time from now because, I mean, I think that the statistics show that a lot of people who retire and go on to lead a life of indolence often get sick and die pretty early, right? I mean, that's what it shows, right? Because they're not moving very much, they're not like exercising their brains very much, they are much more sedentary, and then because they start hanging out with fewer people, they just get like their emotional state winds down, and like so for me, like retiring doesn't seem very attractive to me. Although my brother is retired right now, and he's living the life, right? Because he's, I mean, I don't want to get into his whole story, but I mean, I should have him on the show because he's living the dream literally. So I think retirement these days, though, is not necessarily what it would have been previously, because I think like a long time ago, retirement was you retire and you die within 5 years, right? I think that today, like you retire and you die within 20 or 30 years. And so, like, what do you do with those retirement years? For many people, it's looking more and more like what you're doing, right? Like basically choosing to live where you want and how you want and do what you want, and still have it be exciting and interesting, right? Where like you get up every day and you're like, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm pounding it out, I'm setting up my next gig somewhere, right? And I'm still very much in it. Um,
Yes,
and
and I
one thing you,
sorry,
oh,
go
go
on.
on.
No, I was
Oh,
going
I
to
was
say it's I think what happens as you get older, and I've noticed in the last couple of years that you just get a bit more tired. So I think that's what's going to end up slowing us down. The spirit will be willing. And I've got a friend of mine who's 10 years older who I've always followed through her career and life. And she's now 70. And she said it's so annoying because she said, you just can't do as much. So you're not retiring because you can afford to retire or you've got, you want to sit on a beach or what have you. Because I think you and I are both doing what we love. I hope you're doing what you love because it's really, I think that's the most important thing to me. But you just get a little bit tired, more tired and need more recovery time.
Yeah, I think that's true, but I also think from talking to a bunch of like like trainers and nutritionists and whatnot, that really a lot of that comes down to your diet and exercise. Is that people, like you need to pay more attention to what you eat as you get older, and you also need like you walk for an hour a day, and that is great. And like most people don't even do anything close to that, and that's why they get tired, right? Because they're not exercising like that, and like but beyond that, like strength training would be like another thing to like consider, especially for women because of osteoporosis, right? Like so actually just doing some kind of resistance training, even if it's just rubber bands and stuff like that, in your flat for 10 minutes or 15 minutes a day, that will have big impacts, or so they tell me. but you mentioned in your coaching that you dig into purpose, and you have that book, Simon Sinek's The Big Why, or whatever it's called. You must be familiar with that book,
Yeah, what's your
right?
why? Or yeah, find your why. Find your why. Is it find your why? I think.
Find Your Why. I don't know what it's called, honestly, but I've seen the TED Talk a number of times. And how important do you think it is to actually have the purpose? Like, is that, I mean, like, what is having a purpose versus not having a purpose? How does that impact, your day to day, or your strategy or vision for your life?
Whew, that's a big, deep question, isn't it? I think you have to have the reason to get up in the morning. So, you said about, I get up, I go on LinkedIn, I walk the dog, I do these things. They're all underpinned by, I think, my belief system. So I agree with you entirely about, you are what you eat, you need to exercise, you need to look after yourself and to get good sleep. Don't drink too much alcohol because it's quite a culture here. Walk the dog, get out in fresh air. So part of my my purpose is definitely taking care of myself, but there is also for me a purpose of how can I give back, how can I transform people's lives. I do that through two ways really. One, through the business that I do, and then donating as much of my time as I can. So I always work with somebody every year for free, because usually a food business that I can help and help them grow. So I'm trying to give back that way. I used to be a Virgin business mentor, and prior to that, the Prince's Trust, which is now the King's Trust, helping young people. So there's, I think there is that combination of purpose and goals. So definitely have a purpose to make sure I have enough money, that I have my children have enough, and then the purpose of giving back. So I say those are important to me. And I mentioned my kind of underpin of, I grew up in retail, so my father ran a department store in Newbury. So from the age of nothing, I was part of retail. So I'd go and visit him in the shop with my mum, and then I worked in the shop when I was 14, and then retail's come on, and then food is the other part that's really important. And um yeah, I can't express enough how important food is to me, in terms of personally eating well, but also some of the things that go on in the world. And I've just been reading about some today, and it's just devastating that on one hand we have people taking Ozempic and Monjaro to lose weight, and then over here we've got people, and I'm not going to get political, in different countries in the world who are starving, and their children are starving to death. And to me, and I was thinking about it today, how can I do something to change that? Because I'm not doing anything about that at the moment. I'm helping people and individuals, but not actually going out and going, right, what can I do? So
Well,
maybe
the
that's
world is the world is very much like the Hunger Games. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie series. Have you seen the movie series The
no,
Hunger Games?
I don't know.
Go watch it. I mean, it's a good flick. I mean, like there's three or four of them. But the Hunger Games, that is actually what we have going on here today. Although a lot of people don't realize it. And nutrition has gotten better, and rates of starvation have gone down. But there still is a wide chasm. Between the haves and have-nots, and in many ways, it's growing. But you did mention about your purpose. Thank you so much for sharing that. That was great. But you mentioned that you work with a lot of women of color in business, and like you mentioned chocolate and nuts and all that. So tell me about that. Like, what does that look like in your, like, does that mean you go to like cocoa farms and like nut orchards, or where do you meet these people, and how do you help them?
So the chocolate work that I did started with United Nations. So they asked me to work on a project with Ghana. And the problem with Ghana and Ivory Coast, which is where the majority of cocoa is grown in the world, is they grow the cocoa beans, and the beans are exported often into Europe or into the US, Hershey's, etc. And the value is added in the Western countries, so that it's added in by Nestle or Lindt or Mondelez or whoever. And so the UN work is very much about saying, well, what can we do in country? So we were supporting 11 different companies that were making chocolate. They weren't all female run, but there were a lot of women, which I thought was really good. So you're helping them from literally someone who had almost like a front room factory unit to huge, massive factory units, and looking at the products and saying, well, what could you do to export them to Europe? So we worked with a company who'd already got a listing actually in France, and we're looking to do the same thing in the UK. So looking at, well, what products should we offer? How can we do it? Taking them to shows. One of my favourite photos is of Pure Chocolate, who are based in Jamaica. They came over. We did a show in London, and I wrote a pitch for them, and they went and pitched, and they won the pitch, and they got a listing in John Lewis, which is a department store in London and the UK. So that's really interesting. And then a lot of the work and a lot of the marketing, certainly from the first book, was reaching out to food companies who were maybe a year, 2 years old, who'd done the food markets. They'd maybe sold into a few local stores, but how do they get to the next level? And I've worked, and I don't know why it's women of color. I don't particularly reach out to that genre, but I think it's they're much more open to asking for help. Majority of my clients that are not corporate coaching are women. And I think women are more open to coaching. I don't know what the stats are, but it's my personal experience that they're more open to taking advice and to getting people to help them. Maybe because their confidence isn't as high. I don't know. But it certainly has been really interesting, and we've done everything from hot sauce to boerewors to chocolate to, yeah, lots of different products.
Well, that is terrific. And I work with a lot of women. Two-thirds of realtors, estate agents, as you might say, are women in the United States, right? So like this coaching thing I was at, two-thirds of them, maybe more, were women. It's like a lot of women are very successful and increasingly more so. And probably because there's a lot of women like you who have kind of like, like blazed the trail, right? And you are paying it forward. And so that's a great purpose. So that's a really great reason to get up in the morning. Um,
It is.
so yeah, so thank you so much, Karen, for everything you've shared here. We kind of got to wrap things up, but before we do you have any pearls of wisdom or advice that you want to give to anybody about anything?
I I do truly believe that you can do whatever you want to do, if you're lucky enough to put yourselves in those positions. And I know there are a lot of people who maybe are not lucky enough and haven't had the opportunities that I've had. I mean, I didn't have a super rich background, but I certainly, was able to go to university. And but I think my career certainly, or my happy career, took off when I left corporate life and went off and did my own things. And I think there are so many people out there who can help you. And I'm always devastated when I meet people who say, "Oh, I'm doing this job. I can't get out of this job. It's miserable. It's boring." And they do it for 20, 30 years. Um, my father struggled to some extent with the department store he worked in, and he put all his money into his pension fund and was due to retire at 65, and he died at 63. And that for me is a real parable of my life, to say, well, actually, I'm not going to let that happen. I'm going to enjoy what I do now. I do still work because I still need the money, but um, I do things that I think are interesting, and I help people, and make a difference. And that really is what I want to put out to anybody, wherever you are. You can do it. There's enough people out there to help you. And now with AI, you can, yeah, you don't even need to pay consultants and coaches because you got AI.
The sky's the limit. The
Guys,
sky's
do
the
it.
limit.
No, it is, seriously, I really do believe that wholeheartedly. And I get very frustrated with people who just go, "Oh, no, I can't do it because I've whatever." I mean, I did wait until my children had gone to uni. I didn't want to disrupt their lives, but yeah, go
Well,
do something
ev
interesting.
every life has seasons, really, right? And so there's a season for raising kids. There's a season for, crushing in the corporate world, and there's a season for living in Nice, France, and indulging in the occasional almond croissant, and all of that. Well, Karen, thank you so much for joining me here today. I really appreciated getting to know you. And if people want to get a hold of you, what's the best way for them to reach out to you? Is it LinkedIn, or how should
It's
people get a
probably
hold of
is
you?
LinkedIn actually. If you put in Karen Green and biology, which is the word bio and then ology, you'll find me. It's
Actually, I did find you this morning, and I sent you a LinkedIn connection request. So please do look for that, and I
I
will
will look
follow
it
you on
up.
LinkedIn. And
Thank
it's a
you.
great, wonderful platform. All right, Karen, thank you so very much, and I look forward to catching you on LinkedIn and maybe somewhere else down the road.
Yeah, in real life somewhere.
I hope so. Okay, thanks, Karen. Have a great one. All right, that's a wrap for this episode of 60 Plus Uncensored. Huge thanks to Karen Green for setting the tone with such honesty and insight. Now, if you'd like this episode, do me a favor and then do Karen a favor. Hit the subscribe button, leave a review, and then share it with someone you know who needs to hear it. Oh, and by the way, if you happen to know someone who's over 60 or darn close to it, who's still out there doing big things, living boldly, working with purpose, or aging on their own terms, I would love to hear from you. Reach out at team60plus.com or join the conversation at 60 Plus Uncensored on Reddit. I'm Seb Fry, and this is 60 Plus Uncensored, because as we're learning, life after 60 isn't the end, it's just getting good.
Subscribe now.